Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar on navigating retail disputes and strategies for resolution. My name is Paula Kumar and I'm a practice leader in the disputes team here at LegalVision. Before we begin, a couple of quick housekeeping items. Firstly, you'll receive the recording and slides in your email, so you don't need to sit and take notes. You can submit your questions in the Q&A box and we'll answer them at the end. And please also complete a feedback survey after the webinar. For the next 48 hours, you'll be eligible to have a free consultation with LegalVision and to discuss how we can help your business. So if you can provide your contact details in the survey at the end of this webinar, you'll be entitled to that complimentary consultation. So now we're going to look at what we're talking about today. So as per the agenda, we're going to first be looking at the common types of retail disputes, how to handle complaints, alternative dispute resolution methods and strategies, managing online reviews and social media, and then at the end we'll have the Q&A session. So now we're just going to have a quick poll question, just to see what the kind of most popular opinion is on this. So the question is, what is your biggest challenge when dealing with retail disputes? Is it managing customer complaints effectively, handling negative online reviews and social media feedback, resolving disputes without escalating to litigation, dealing with supplier or contract disputes, or is it just exploring options, you're looking to improve your dispute resolution strategy? So we'll just give you a moment to quickly choose which one you think is the biggest challenge for you and your business. Okay, so the most popular answer seems to be dealing with supplier or contract disputes. I think it's just, yeah, that's obviously going to be a big one. Dealing with in your business, there's always going to be some problems along the way. All of these areas really kind of integrate into each other. So, effective complaint management can actually result in preventing negative online complaints and reduce the likelihood of disputes escalating. So it's really important to have a robust dispute resolution strategy, which can kind of help you understand and improve both your customer and supplier relationships. So now let's look at how you can do some of those things. We'll start off by looking at what the most common types of retail disputes are. So, I mean, the most common within both business to consumer and business to business relationships is commonly the product quality issues. So they're really a significant aspect of retail operations, and you need to have obviously a really clear understanding of these issues, and that's clear along the chain, whether you're a retailer, supplier, or even a consumer, understanding what your rights in these areas are. So if we look at the legal framework for consumers, the main legislation in place is the Consumer Rights Act 2015, and this gives consumers some really robust protection specifically for consumers. So the first thing is that obviously goods are going to have to be of a satisfactory quality. They have to be fit for purpose and they have to be as described. Consumers have a 30-day right to reject for a full refund, with also with repair or replacement after 30 days. and a refund if these actually fail. The burden of proof is on the retailer for the first 6 months to show that the item was not faulty when it sold, and then it shifts over to the consumer. When we look at business to business retail relationships, it's the Sale of Goods Act 1979. And this implies terms into a contract. And so even if you don't have express terms about quality, there will be implied terms in there to say that the goods must be of satisfactory quality and fit for purpose. But unlike consumer legislation, there is no statutory right to reject after acceptance of goods. And quite often, business to business disputes are governed by a specific contract terms rather than looking at what your statutory rights are. So it's really important to have very clear express terms in contracts as much as possible to deal with any potential issues. So now if we look at some common quality issues, so goods not fit for purpose. And this is really, products that are failing to meet specific needs of the buyer. So for example, someone has ordered a printer and it fails to meet specified print quality for business use. Another one is items not as described. So this is really delivered goods don't match the specification or agreed specification. And this is going to be really particularly important in business to business retail, where, adhering to precise specifications is really, really crucial. And quite often you can have disputes arising from this when delivered goods deviate from the agreed specifications. So, for example, a bulk order of fabric has the incorrect color or pattern, and then this then disrupts your production schedule and, can then lead on to contract breaches with customers along the way. Another quality issue is faulty products. So, obviously, if defective products, if they don't work, then they can cause significant disruption again along the business, and this can be often involve higher stakes in business to business transactions, because there's often larger quantities or specialized equipment there as well. Durability concerns. So again, you've got some protection in the Consumer Rights Act, which says that items should have reasonable durability. But within business to business, durability concerns are normally set in the contract, or you can look at what the industry standards are. And an example here is, again, you might have some form of industrial equipment that fails before the expected lifespan. Pricing and volume discrepancies. So, you might have tiered pricing structures that are based on volume commitments. And if a buyer falls short of agreed purchase volumes, then this is quite likely to lead to price adjustments. And on the other hand, suppliers can be accused of overcharging if they fail to apply agreed discounts correctly. So disputes of this sort can often involve quite substantial sums, and that might need some forensic accounting in order to try and resolve the matter. We can also look at logistics and supply chain disruptions. So retail can often involve quite complex supply chains with disruptions leading to significant disputes along the way. So, you might have issues that include failure to meet delivery requirements. There might be disputes over responsibility for goods that are damaged in transit, or disagreements about liability for delays caused by third-party logistic providers. And we really saw during the COVID pandemic how force majeure clauses in these contracts can really become quite contentious and, cause some challenges within this area. And so that is something to watch out for. Now, if we look at how to handle complaints. So when we think about the very competitive retail landscape, you need to ensure that effective complaint resolution is not just about addressing individual issues, but it's really a crucial part of customer retention and brand reputation. And having a really well-structured complaint handling system can turn a dissatisfied customer into a loyal customer. And it can also really provide some valuable insights to improve your business. Successful complaint handling, you need to really establish a robust approach. You want your customers to be able to voice their concerns through various means, whether that's in store or over the phone or via email or over a website. And each channel should be integrated into a centralized complaint tracking system, just to ensure that you have consistent handling of the issues. It's really crucial to have a dedicated customer service, which is staffed by well-trained personnel. You want your frontline employees to be equipped with knowledge and authority to resolve common issues on the spot. But then when you have obviously more complex or high value issues, these can be escalated to supervisors or managers. It's important to train your staff on statutory consumer rights and skills, and these can include things like active listening and empathy and de-escalation techniques to really try and turn that first negative interaction into a positive outcome. And one thing that can be really helpful in terms of staff training on these issues is role-playing exercises, which can be quite effective in preparing staff for how to approach challenging scenarios. When you're looking at your complaint resolution process, you want to try and follow a really structured pathway. And the first thing is, you begin with a prompt acknowledgement. You want customers to understand that you have received their complaint immediately and that you're going to deal with it or investigate it. So that's really important that they receive the prompt acknowledgement. The next thing that you would be looking to do is assess and perhaps categorize the complaint. So is it a simple issue that can be resolved quickly? Or is there a complex problem that requires some in-depth investigation? You might be looking to assign priority levels based on the urgency and potential impact of the issue. So, for example, a safety concern would obviously take precedence over some kind of minor billing discrepancy there. When you're looking at your investigation, obviously you need to be gathering all the relevant information. You might need to be consulting with different departments, reviewing records or, examining product specifications. And then it's just really important to document all of your findings within that process. So there's the record. When you're looking at formulating a resolution, you obviously want to consider the immediate issue and resolving it, but it's not just that. You want to look at the overall customer relationship, and sometimes going over and beyond with a goodwill gesture can actually turn, somebody who's complaining about service into somebody who's advocating for it. So you really want to try and communicate resolution clearly, and explain the rationale behind the decision. And then once you're implementing the solution, again, it should be swift and followed with a check to ensure that the customer is satisfied. So you might want to consider having a survey after a complaint to really gauge whether the customer is satisfied with the process and the outcome as well. Now let's have a look at some alternative dispute methods. So really the first one is negotiation, and it's often the first step within dispute resolution. It can involve informal or formal negotiation. And, depending on how complex it is, that might mean, senior management, or you might have your legal team involved in those negotiations as well. The key strategy, as I said before, is to really focus on your long-term business relationship. If this is a relationship that you want to continue, and often it is, you want to perhaps be considering some creative solutions, not just the kind of very straightforward ones. So, incorporating some discounts, whether that's immediate or ongoing. You might want to have extended warranties. Are there different aspects of the service that you can provide them? Lots of different ways to kind of look at it and approach it. But often, the key to negotiations is that if it's not resolved fairly quickly, then they can break down. And then the next step along the way can be mediation. So this is a very popular method to resolve disputes. And for mediation, you involve an independent mediator, somebody who isn't aware of the issues and before they're instructed. And they are really there to facilitate discussion. And it is a completely voluntary and non-binding approach. But it can be very cost effective when you compare it to litigation. It maintains confidentiality, and it can also be very useful to preserve relationships because it's not in such a contentious environment as litigation is in the courtroom. So it can allow for some more creative and business orientated solutions rather than what the court might actually order. Arbitration is another method that we look at for resolving disputes. It's probably a less common method for consumer retail disputes, certainly, because there would be potentially concerns about fairness and cost. It's more used in business-to-business disputes, particularly if you've got a commercial international contract. And in an arbitration, you are going to have some control over who you select as the arbitrator, and they would normally have some expertise in the specific industry that you are have a dispute in, so they can be very helpful in that way. But obviously, they are expensive as well. So there's a lot of factors to weigh in at this point. Ombudsman services. So this is we have an independent body that will investigate and resolve a complaint. Can be retail specific, and from the consumer's point of view, it's a free or very low cost service for consumers. So the ombudsman will investigate the complaint, recommend some solutions, and then the decisions are usually binding on the retailers if they're accepted by consumers. So very useful for consumers in that context. They are less common in the business to business context. Now we'll look at how to manage online reviews and social media. Um, Obviously, a retailer's reputation is going to be partly shaped by online reviews and social media interactions. So, it's crucial to manage your online presence, maintain your brand image, attract new customers, and, crucially also retain your existing ones. So the first step in managing online reviews and social media is implementing a robust monitoring system. So this should really go beyond simply just checking your own social media accounts or review pages. You can set up real-time alerts for any mentions of your brand, especially on high impact platforms or major review sites. And this is going to allow for a rapid response to potential issues before they escalate. You really want to regularly schedule deeper dives into your online presence, and this could be weekly or monthly, and this can really help you identify trends and the overall sentiment of your brand. When you're analyzing online feedback, you want to probably look beyond just the star ratings or number of likes that you have. So, look at the content as well of what the customers are saying. Are they generally satisfied, but mentioning specific areas for improvement? And if there are recurring themes, that understanding is going to help you target improvements in your products or services. So it can be really, really valuable feedback that you receive. And it's, businesses who take into account those things that are said by customers are going to be really valued by them. Responding to online reviews and social media comments, they can require quite a delicate balance. Obviously, you need to be speedy, you want to be seen as empathetic, but you also want to be really consistent with your brand. So, if you've got reviews that are coming up, whether they're positive or negative, ideally you want to respond to them within 24 to 48 hours. And particularly on social media websites, on particular platforms, users really expect almost an instant interaction. So, the sooner you respond, if that can be within a few hours, the better, really. You should try to develop a really clear tone of voice for your online interactions. So, as I said, this should align with your overall brand personality, but it should also, be on the side of being helpful, empathetic, and really solution orientated. So personalizing responses, if possible, will make you stand out a little bit. So, using customers' names and reference specific points that they've actually raised in the review or comment is going to make customers feel like they're really heard. When you're looking at negative comments or reviews, you want to follow a really structured approach. So the first thing is, thank them for their feedback. You might apologize for that they've had a negative experience, but without actually admitting fault if the situation is really unclear, which often it is at that point. But the key is really emphasizing with their frustration and trying to think about offering a solution or, some next steps. And typically the first thing is going to be trying to take that conversation offline, by providing them some contact details, or, asking them to get into contact so you can try to resolve their situation. What is also important to know is that responses to negative reviews aren't just for the original poster. It's for everyone who might read that review in the future. So, if you're looking for a particular company to provide goods or services, you might be looking up their reviews and what their social media is like, and see how they respond to comments, and even negative comments, how are they actually responding to those? And that can, if you can be seen to have a very thoughtful, solution-orientated response, that can actually enhance your reputation, even if you're being criticized for something. So, being quite defensive in a response can have a negative impact, not just on that customer, but for anyone else who reads reviews following on from that. So for positive reviews, you want to show genuine appreciation, obviously, thank the customer for taking the time to share their experience, and mention specific points that they bring up. And this really shows that you are valuing their feedback, and are paying attention to the details. But sometimes, despite all of this, despite your best efforts, you might sometimes face a social media crisis. They can come completely out of the blue. It might be a product recall or a negative post, or a broader issue that affects the whole industry, including your brand. So, in those situations, if you can have a pre-prepared crisis plan, that's going to be crucial in those situations. If we look at what a crisis plan can include, first of all, you want a designated crisis management team. So you want people to know what their roles are and their responsibilities, and that's all kind of predetermined. You might have some pre-approved message templates for common things that are happening. A escalation process for the different levels of crisis is also important. And then really looking at what your guidelines are for communication, and those channels during crisis. And then a plan for post-crisis analysis and what you can do to really repair your reputation. Those are the key aspects that you want to address in your plan. So during crisis, the key is to communicate early, often, and crucially honestly. And so you want to acknowledge the issue quickly, even if you don't have all the answers yet. Acknowledge the problem, that there may be a problem. Providing regular updates is also, again, going to make someone feel like they're actually being heard and that the process is continuing. You want to be transparent about the steps that you're taking to address the problem, and offer a clear path to resolution for the affected customers. When you're looking at reviews in particular, you want to try and understand that there is a difference between fact and opinion in reviews. So you might not like the negative opinion, but quite often it's not grounds for actually removing it, unless it contains a factually incorrect statement. So, if you do have any reviews which you believe to be fake or defamatory, you need to consider those really carefully, and, potentially be able to pursue legal action, or request removal. But that's obviously going to be different, depending on whether it's a fact or an opinion or exactly what has been said. So that concludes the main part of the webinar. You might find our publication useful, which is our guide to resolving UK business disputes. And you can access this by scanning in the QR code. We also have an upcoming event that may be of interest to you, which is what to do when your brand is copied. And this is going to be held on Tuesday, 11th of March at 11 a.m. And there is a link there to register for that if you're interested in it. We also want to explain to you how to become a LegalVision member. You can get access to a very wide team of experienced lawyers to help you sort out all of your legal issues quickly. You will get unlimited access, and it's really like having your own in-house counsel for a fraction of the cost. We can assist you with unlimited document drafting and reviewing of business contracts, unlimited legal advice consultations, unlimited domestic trademark registration, and much more. As a LegalVision member, you don't have to worry about the cost for lawyers ever again. So, we take care of all the business as usual legal work, so you can really focus on running your business. So to learn about how our membership can help you, you can request a free consultation when the survey appears at the end of this webinar. Now we'll move on to the Q&A session. So the first question that we've had is that they are a electronics retailer and entered into a contract for a large order. But just before delivery, the supplier informed them that there was a fire and they can only deliver a certain amount before the agreed date. How can we approach this situation, as we've got production schedule and this will impact our deliveries? So the first thing is to review the contract, and that's always the first port of call. So, there might be some force majeure clauses in there that would cover this situation. So, you need to look at that to really understand what the legal obligations are. And you probably want to have a lawyer check that out for you to really understand what your options are at that point. In terms of kind of assessing the impact, you want to think about how the delay is going to affect your schedule and if that's going to result in any potential losses, because that's obviously going to then affect what your claim might be against the supplier in terms of what damages you've actually suffered. It's important when you have this kind of dispute to mitigate your losses. So you really want to explore alternatives, if possible. Are there any other suppliers who might be able to provide you with the rest of the order on time? That's going to help mitigate your losses. And then, potentially, you obviously want to try and stay on side with the supplier if possible and negotiate with them. There might be various compromises. There might be, you can think about priority production, if they can offer any compensation, or perhaps discount on the delayed part of the order. But really the key in all of this is, if this does go further, is to keep everything in writing if possible, document everything, even if it's discussion, make sure you have note of that, because all of that is going to be obviously relevant if it doesn't get resolved. And I think this approach would really, what you're looking to do, if possible, is maintain that business relationship. The goal is often, you want to find a mutually beneficial solution, rather than resorting to legal action if possible. Okay, next question is, customers posted a negative review claiming they received a faulty product and that customer service was unhelpful. The post is gathering traction. How should the company respond? So the first thing, as I said before, responding really promptly. You acknowledge their frustration, and that they've had this negative experience, and ask them to contact you, via email or a private message, so that you can, resolve this issue offline. And then once you're in that kind of private communication, gather details about the specific issue. If there is a solution, offer it quickly, and address the claim about unhelpful customer service. Find out what is it specifically that was unhelpful about the customer service, because that might then help give you some valuable feedback about how things were approached and what could be different going forward. You might also want to publicly respond, and in this, be neutral in that, you thank the customer for bringing the issue to your attention. Mention that a resolution has been offered. You don't go into specifics, but just say, please, the resolution has been found, and really emphasize your commitment to customer satisfaction as well. We've got one more question, which is, we implemented a no questions asked return policy for 60 days after purchase. We're now experiencing a high volume of returns, some of which appear to be abusive, items showing signs of use or seasonal items being returned. How can we balance customer satisfaction with protecting our business interests whilst ensuring compliance with consumer rights legislation? So this is obviously one where, you need to balance compliance, customer satisfaction, but then also sustainability of your business. And by offering quite a generous returns policy, that can lead to abuse. So, there's various things that you can do. If you want to continue the policy, you can attach some conditions to it. So say that items need to be in a original unused condition, with tags attached, if it's any non-faulty return. You can also consider implementing a restocking fee for non-faulty goods again. So that might be something else that you look to do. I think it's also about educating customers. So, educating them on the impact of returns, on sustainability and also your pricing. So, having that kind of information can be really crucial, especially if you provide guidance on how customers can select the right products. That's also going to help reduce unnecessary returns. Other things, if you have technology that can really track return patterns, so then you can really look at, why are these returns happening? Is it because of some faults, or is it because of other reasons? And then, by having a kind of a system that allows customers to log returns online as well, this is going to allow for you for better tracking within the whole system. And then, individually, by using that, you can look at that tracking system for individual customers. So, look at what their return history is, and focus on non-fault returns, obviously. If there are particular customers with high return rates, you could also be reaching out to them to understand what their needs are and offer some assistance. If we think about alternative options, so once you've gone, if it's a non-faulty item, obviously you can offer exchanges instead of refunds. Perhaps you might also want to think about like a try before and buy option. But that might only apply to certain categories or items, but it's just something to worth thinking about. Okay, doesn't seem to be any other questions, so that's all the time we have for today. If you want to submit your details in the survey at the end, then we can help you with any other questions. You can learn about how our membership can help you. And well, we offer this as a free webinar. We really value your feedback, so if you can complete the survey again, we would really appreciate that. And thank you so much for joining us.